So I'm going to go over a common spot for people who experience like a knot or a tension or just an uncomfortable feeling in their mid-back scapular area. Generally it's going to be on the right side, I find, probably because most people are right-handed. So it tends to be just in between the spine and the scapula. It might even feel like it's underneath the scapula or the shoulder blade. So pretty common. I've had it for off and on for the last decade. So these are things I do to take care of that. All I'm going to need for this is a foam roller, preferably a long one, and a ball of some kind. Tennis ball works nicely. So first thing I'm going to do is let's talk about what causes this. It's pretty much always posture related. So we tend to have a more rounded posture in the back, kind of like a hunchback. We have rounded shoulders or forward shoulders, and we have a forward head posture from staring at a screen or looking down at our phone. So those are typically the causes of that. So what we need to do is kind of correct that. What happens is the muscles along the mid-back become overstretched. So they're angry because they're being pulled beyond what they are comfortable with. And what happens is we get a lot of muscles that are tight in the front side and overstretched on the back side. The tendency for people is to want to like do this, you know, to actually continue to stretch an already overstretched muscle because it feels nice, I guess, but it doesn't help the problem and actually can make it even worse. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tennis ball and I'm just going to put it right in that spot where I feel that. Now, this is going to really provide temporary relief. So I'll find that tender spot and I can just hang out there. A lacrosse ball would increase the intensity. And I can go through some motion through the shoulder as well to also enhance what I'm feeling there. And I'm going to do that for like 30 to 60 seconds, really any length of time you want. And move around a little bit. I can kind of surround the spot where I'm feeling that knot or that trigger point. And I'll just hang out there, take some deep breaths. Okay, so that's what I'll do with the massage ball. Another thing that's nice to do that's handy is I'm actually going to massage the pec muscles. I mentioned these get tight, so any kind of massage I can do this on the ground to get more pressure. I can do this against a wall. I actually like using a softball for this to really get into these pec muscles a little easier. All right, so you'll feel tender spots. You might feel a little bit of bumpiness. That's a good sign that you probably need to massage those muscles out a little bit. There's no harm in doing this, even if you don't feel mid-back pain. Everything I'm going to show you is beneficial to pretty much all of us. So, and if you are experiencing this pain off and on even, this is the stuff you would do to not only treat it, but to prevent it from coming back in the future. So that's what I'm going to do with the massage ball. I'm done with that. Now I'm going to take the foam roller here. Since it's convenient, I'll just go ahead and roll the upper back, pretty much mid-back and up. I'm crossing my arms to get a little deeper into that. I might feel that same knot again, but I'm going to hit both sides equally. And then I'm going to use this foam roller to create some thoracic extension. So I'm going to bend backwards, basically from the segments on the spine, mid-back up. And I'm going to continue to do that all the way up the thoracic spine. Thoracic spine is basically your rib cage. This is going to affect, this type of knot affects the thoracic spine and the neck of the cervical spine. So those are usually not necessarily the source of the problem, but the place where you might feel them, and they can be the source of the problem. So that's the areas we're going to be addressing mostly in this warm-up. So hitting the segments of the spine, getting that extension. I can even hold it a little bit, taking those breaths. Okay. None of this should be uncomfortably painful. Like, you should maybe be on the edge of discomfort, but nothing you're doing should cause pain that seems like excessive. Okay, we're not trying to torture ourselves. All right, so that's my thoracic extension there. And then what I'm going to do with the same foam roller, since I got it, is I'm going to actually sit on it lengthwise. Switch spots here. This is why you need a long foam roller. I'm going to sit on this lengthwise. I'm just going to open up my palms to the ceiling and let my pec muscles stretch out a little bit here. If you don't feel a stretch, that's fine, because we're actually hitting some deep musculature that may not even register a stretch. But what I can do is just use one arm at a time and focus on one side at a time, do that. I can move my arm above my head. I can go through like angel motions or W's, anything you want to do where you feel like you might need that stretch or that tension is. So I'll do this for any stretch. I'm gonna hold for about 30 to 60 seconds. This just feels nice no matter what. But I do wanna point out that I wanna keep my palms up. I don't wanna go into this like internally rotated rounded shoulder posture again. What I can also do is squeeze my shoulder blades against the foam roller, so now I'm actually engaging those overstretched muscles. And at the same time, because I mentioned forward head posture, I'm actually gonna drive my head into the foam roller, what's called a chin tuck. So I'm actually pushing against the foam roller and activating the muscles on the posterior neck, reversing the forward head posture, right? So forward head posture, opposite of that is I'm engaging those muscles. And since I'm here, I might as well just do some neck movements as well. Looking left, looking right, rotation. Everything I'm showing you, there's probably dozens of variations of each one. So I'm getting movement from my neck, I'm getting movement through my thoracic spine. There's a lot of exercise you can choose from that. I'm just showing you some of my favorites. Okay, I got the same foam roller now. I'm gonna add some rotation through my thoracic spine. So I'm gonna cuddle this foam roller here, keep my knee up against it, and I'm gonna rotate open. So I'm trying to get the shoulder open. Try not to confuse your movement based off the arm. Make sure you're focusing on what the rib cage is doing or that your chest is doing. I want that to open up. If I just do this, looks like I'm rotating maybe, but I'm not. So I wanna make sure that the shoulders and the thoracic spine, the rib cage, whatever you wanna call it, is what's rotating. Now I can hold it, take some deep breaths, try to get a little deeper into it, or I can rep it out. See if I can increase that range of motion through movement. Okay? I'm gonna do that on both sides, of course. So that's your thoracic rotation. If you don't wanna do that version, I also like a quadruped, or I'm gonna drop down to my forearms, so I'm on my forearms and my knees, and I'm gonna thread the needle and open up. Again, watching out that I'm not just moving my arm. So I tend to like to do this, where I bring my hand behind my head and use my elbow as a guide. Follow it with my neck, because where I look is where I tend to move. And I'm gonna do about anything that I'm repping out, I'm doing for about 10 reps. That's my standard. If I'm holding something, I'm gonna hold it for 30 to 60 seconds. Okay, and of course I'm gonna do, even if I only feel it on one side, I'm still gonna do both sides because I want symmetry. Okay, so I'll do 10 reps on the other side. Okay, and then the last thing I'm gonna do, or the last thing I'm gonna address, is my overhead mobility. So we don't really do this in our daily lives, except for in sports and training. So we tend to get really limited in our overhead position of our shoulder. So these muscles, again, getting tight from that. So I'm trying to recreate that stretch by getting my arm overhead. And my favorite way to do that is using a bench. This is called a lat stretch. There's a lot more than just the lats being stretched. There's at least 5 other muscles being stretched, but quite a bit more than that. So I'm gonna bring my elbows, I'm gonna try and touch my hands to my shoulder blades. If you have like a stick to hold on to, that's really helpful, but I'm just gonna try to put my hands behind my back and sink into this. And again, I can hold it, or I can rep it out, or both. If I'm really tight, I like to hold the stretch and then maybe finish off with just like a few reps to get some motion in there. You can also do one arm at a time. Some people are so tight that that's what they'll need to do. A lot of options here. You can use a stability ball. Notice that I'm bending my elbows because that deepens the stretch. So rather than straightening my arm, I like to bend my elbows, which affects the muscles that are elbow flexors. Elbow extenders, I mean. Okay, so there's that stretch. One of my favorites. I mean, just do that anyways. And if you don't have a bench or you don't want to do that version, you can do what's called a doorway stretch or an overhead pec stretch. And I'm just going to use a doorway or any object I can where I can get my arms overhead and create that stretch. So you can do bent arm and overhead. I always emphasize the overhead, but both will create a slightly different stretch, so feel free to do both. And that might provide some relief to the knots that you're experiencing in the back. If you can do this a few times a week, at least before you work out, The whole thing takes a couple minutes tops, and you'll start to feel some relief in that back.